Hi, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. Glad to be back with you this evening. Continuing to read in our book, The Long Winter by Laura Ingalls Wilder. If you remember yesterday, Pa had heard the old Indian who came into the store to warn the white settlers about the upcoming winter, that it would be many months long and very hard. So Pa decided that backed up his idea that what he had been thinking about winter, and so he was getting his family into town. They could live in their store building that he built. I'm going to show you a picture of their store building, and I want to show you something special about it. So here's their store building right there. And see this front here right there? It looks square and big, like a big two-story building. But if you look on this side, it's not all the way back 2 stories. That's what they call a false front. There could be a little room up there, but it's not the whole building. I thought you'd like to know that. Settled in Town, Chapter 8. Pa's store building was one of the best in town. It stood by itself on the east side of Main Street. Its false front was tall and square-cornered, with one upstairs window in it. Downstairs there were 2 windows, with the front door between them. Pa did not stop the loaded wagon there, though. He turned the corner to 2nd Street. That was only a road, and drove in behind the store to the lean-to door. There was a good wooden stable with 1 haystack already beside it, and beyond them on 2nd Street, Laura saw a new house, newly built, of fresh boards. Pa's stable and store building had already weathered gray, like the other stores on Main Street. Now, in case you don't know, when they cut wood, it usually looks a beautiful kind of pale yellowish color. And if you don't paint it and it's exposed out to the weather and the sun, then over time it turns more gray. And that's a weathered board. And they didn't paint theirs, so theirs is weathered gray. Well, here we are, said Pa. It won't take us long to get settled in. He untied Ellen the cow and her big calf from behind the wagon, and Laura led them to their stalls in the stable while Pa unloaded the wagon. Then he drove it to the stable and began to unhitch the horses. The lean-to's inside door opened under the stairs that went up from the back room. The narrow back room would be the kitchen, of course, and it had a window on its other end looking out across the road that was 2nd Street and on across vacant lots to the side of a little vacant store. Farther over the prairie to the northeast, Laura could see the 2-story depot, so that'd be for the train. Ma stood in the bare front room looking at it and thinking where to put things. In the big empty room stood a coal heater and a shiny bottom desk and a bottom chair. Why, where did the desk and chair come from? Laura exclaimed. They're Pa's, said Ma. Judge Carroll's new partner has a desk, so Judge Carroll let Pa have his old desk and chair and the coal heater for part of the rent. The desk had drawers, and the top had pigeonholes under a marvelously flexible cover made of narrow slats of wood that could be pulled, curving down and pushed up again. Now, pigeonholes were just little, maybe this big cutouts, see, like that? And they were just like a tube in there, but they were made of wood, and you could put stuff in them. We'll put the rocking chair by the other window, Ma went on. Then Mary'll have the sunshine all afternoon, and I can read to us until sunset. We'll do the first thing, Mary, so you can settle down and keep Grace out of the way. Ma and Laura set the rocking chairs by the window. Then they edged the table through the doorway and put it between the coal heater and the door to the kitchen. That will be a warm place to eat, said Ma. Can we put up the curtain now? Laura asked. The two windows were like strange eyes looking in. Strangers went by the street, and across the street stood staring at the store buildings. Fuller's hardware store was there, with the drugstore beside it, and Powder's tailor shop, and Lopez's groceries, dry goods, and general merchandise. Yes, the sooner the better, said Ma. She unpacked the muslin curtains, and she and Laura put them up. A wagon went by while they did it, and suddenly 5 or 6 boys came down 2nd Street, and after them, as many girls came by. School's out for the day, said Ma. You and Carrie will be going to school tomorrow. Her voice was glad. This is what it looked like when they were hanging their curtains. Laura did not say anything. No one knew how she dreaded meeting strangers. No one knew of the flutter in her breast and the gone feeling in her stomach when she had to meet them. She didn't like town. She didn't want to go to school. It was so unfair that she had to go. Mary wanted to be a school teacher, but she couldn't because she was blind. Laura didn't want to teach, but she must do it to please Ma. Probably all of her life she must go among strange people and teach strange children. She would always be scared, but she must never show it. No, Pa had said she must never be afraid, and she wouldn't be. She would be brave if it killed her. But even if she could get over being afraid, she could not like strange people. She knew how animals would act. She understood what animals thought, but you could never be sure about people. Always, the curtains of the window kept strangers from looking in. Carrie had set the plain chairs around the table. The floor was bright, clean pine boards, and the large room looked very pleasant when Laura and Ma laid the braided rag rug before the door. Pa was setting up the cook stove in the kitchen. When he had put the stovepipe together straight and solid, he brought in the dry goods box cupboard and set it against the wall on the other side of the doorway. There, he said. The stove and the cupboards both will be handy to the table in the other room. Yes, Charles, that's well thought out, Ma praised him. Now, when we get the beds upstairs, we'll soon be through. Pa handed up the pieces of the bedstead while Ma and Laura drew them through the trap door at the top of the stairs. He crowded the fat feather beds through, and the blankets and quilts and pillows, and then he and Carrie went to feel the straw ticks from the haystack. Remember, they used that like a mattress. It was like a gigantic pillowcase the size of a bed, and they would fill that with straw, and they called that a straw tick. They must fill the straw ticks with hay because there was no straw in this new country where no grain had been raised yet. Under the roof attic, a building paper partition had made 2 rooms. One had the window to the west and one to the east. From the eastern window at the top of the stairs, Ma and Laura could see the far skyline and the prairie and the new house and the stable, and Pa and Carrie busily stuffing hay into the straw ticks. Pa and I will have this room at the head of the stairs, Ma decided. You girls can have the front one. They set up the bedsteads and laid in the slats. That's what holds up the mattress. Then Pa pushed the fat crackling straw ticks up to them, and Laura and Carrie made the beds while Ma went down to get supper. The sunset was shining in the western window and flooding the whole room with a golden light, while they leveled the sweet-smelling, crackling hay in the straw ticks and laid the feather beds on top and stroked them smooth. Then, one on each side, they spread the sheets and the blankets and quilts, drawing them even and folding and tucking them into nice squares at the corner. Then they plumped up a pillow and set it in place, and that bed was made. When the 3 beds were done, there was nothing more to do. Laura and Carrie stood in the warm-colored, chilly sunlight, looking out the window. Pa and Ma were talking in the kitchen downstairs, and 2 strange men were talking in the street. Further away, but not very far, someone was whistling a tune, and there were many little sounds beside that. Altogether, they made the sound of town. Smoke was coming up from behind the storefronts. Past Fuller's Hardware, 2nd Street, went west on the prairie to a lonely building standing in the dead grasses. It had 4 windows, and the sunset was shining through them, so there must be even more windows on the other side. It had a boarded-in entry like a nose, and a front gabled end, and a stovepipe that was not smoking. Laura said, "I guess that must be the schoolhouse." "I wish we didn't have to go," Carrie almost whimpered. "Well, we do have to," said Laura. Carrie looked at her wonderingly. "Aren't you scared?" "There's nothing to be scared of," Laura answered boldly. "And if there was, I wouldn't be scared." Downstairs was warm from the fire in the cook stove, and Ma was saying that this place was so well built that it took hardly any fire to heat it. She was getting supper, and Mary was setting the table. "I don't need any help," Mary said happily. "The cupboard is in a different place, but Ma put all the dishes in the same places in the cupboard, so I can find them just as easily as ever." The front room was spacious in the lamplight when Ma set the lamp on the supper table. The creamy curtains and the varnished yellow desk and chair, the cushions on the rocking chair and the rag rugs, and the red tablecloth and the pine color of the floor and the walls and the ceilings were gay, that means cheerful. The floor and the walls were so solid that not the smallest draft could come in. "I wish we had a place like this out on the claim," Laura said. "I'm glad we have it in town where you girls can go to school this winter," said Ma. "You wouldn't walk from the claim shanty every day if the weather was bad." "It's a satisfaction to me to be where we can be sure of getting coal and supplies," Pa declared. "Coal beets, brushwood, all hollow for giving steady heat. We'll keep enough coal in the lean-to to outlast any blizzard, and I can always get more from the lumber yard. Living in town, we're no danger of running short of any kind of supplies." "How many people are in town now?" Ma asked him. Pa counted up. 14 business buildings and the depot, and then Sherman's and Garfield's and the Owen houses. That's 18 families, not counting 3 or 4 shacks in the back streets. Then there's the Wilder boys who are batching. That means that they were bachelors living by themselves. They didn't have wives. In the feed store. And there's a man named Foster who moved in with his ox team and is staying at Sherwood's. Count them all, there must be as many as 75 or 80 people living here in town. And to think, there wasn't a soul here last fall, said Ma. Then she smiled at Pa. "I'm glad you see good at last, Charles, in staying in a settled place." Pa had to admit that he did. But he said, "On the other hand, all this costs money, and that's scarcer than a hen's teeth." That's because chickens don't have teeth. The railroad's the only place a man can get $1 for a day's work. And it's not hiring anybody. And the only hunting left around here is jackrabbits. Oregon's the place to go nowadays. The country out there will be settled up pretty soon too. Yes, but now it's time for the girls to be getting some schooling, Ma said firmly. And that meant I don't want to have us move anymore. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. They're all settled in. I don't think I could get moved all in one day, but they did. Pretty amazing. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing and leave me a comment. If you do, I'll make sure to answer you. All right. Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead, I want to pray blessings on you and yours in your house and out of your house, in the day and in the night. Whatever you do, keep dreaming. Good night.